It's Thursday, May 30th. I'm Adam Walsh, and this is The Signal. It is Multiple Sclerosis Awareness Month, and today is World MS Day, a day when folks share stories and raise awareness. So that's what we're going to do today. Plus, we're going to talk about research and treatments, so don't go anywhere. So joining me in the studio for today's discussion, we've got Zita Kavanaugh-Taylor and Bruna Cardoso, two folks living with MS. And we've got Dr. Fraser Clift, whose specialty is neurology and multiple sclerosis. Well, so welcome back to the show, Bruna, and welcome to the show to both of you. How all three of you doing?
Fine, thank you.
Yeah, thanks for this. Doc, let's start with you. So when we're talking about awareness, tell us about MS. So I think everyone out there has a basic kind of understanding, but there's a big range to how much you can understand when it comes to something like multiple sclerosis.
Absolutely. And well, first of all, thank you for putting this off, and to the folks at CBC for understanding the importance of raising awareness for multiple sclerosis. This is quite a common disease that, unfortunately, I think it's somewhat of a bad rap in the public domain. MS is very common. About 0.1% of the population globally will be affected by multiple sclerosis. In North America in particular, we're more predisposed to having it based off of our genetic predisposition and just geography. So typically, the further away from the equator you go, the higher the incidence of multiple sclerosis. I think the quoted statistic is that somewhere every 20 minutes someone is diagnosed with this. So quite common, and not a one-size-fits-all diagnosis by any stretch. I've never met two people with the exact multiple sclerosis phenotype or symptomatology. It's variable among individuals. Unfortunately, based off the history of the diagnosis, we often think about disability and wheelchair when we hear the term multiple sclerosis. And that may have been true at some point, but the disease, our understanding of it, has evolved greatly over the course of the last 10 years and will continue to evolve greatly over the next 10.
Yeah, it's... For myself, even, like growing up, it was something that, like at one point we had a family friend. This was in the 90s, and it was just a slow learning process. But also the difference between the 1990s and the understanding compared to now, how vast is this difference? Oh,
it's night and day. Yeah. Our disease-modifying therapies for multiple sclerosis really were only in development in the 90s. Yeah. So the first one became available in kind of late 1990s. I think 1996 or 1997, one of the beta interferons became available. But since that time, our understanding of disease process has expanded, and with that, our treatments have become much more targeted and effective. And so I always tell people, although we've not cured this disease at this point, this has certainly become a very treatable disease.
Mm. That's a good thank you for establishing everything like that, because I love having a nice bit of context for the start of the show, for everyone to know here's where we are, right? We're talking World MS Day, Awareness Month, and this is some of that important background. And folks, as you're listening to the show, if you're living with MS and you want to get in touch with us, email us, thesignal@cbc.ca, or text us, 709-327-8206. Let's go to the other two guests here in studio, Bruna and Zita. Bruna, we'll start with you. We're talking about awareness. What is it? What's something that you want folks to be aware of when it comes to MS and when we look at an Awareness Month?
I think we are living lives that are very fast-paced. Yeah. And people with MS, we want to still live that fast-paced life, right? Because we have families and we have careers. But then there's that time of the day that may go for 5 minutes. But it's that moment that you feel the tremors, your legs go a little wobbly, your heartbeat goes a little weird, and you can't exactly talk because your speech will get slurred. And I'm talking about my experience. And I'll have those moments. And I notice that people that are around me and people that know that I have MS, it's a learning curve for them to understand that I'm not sad, I'm not mad at anyone. I just can't function right now, you know? And then talking about stigma, that doesn't mean that I can't do stuff. It doesn't mean that I can't be a good professional anymore, that I can't have some sort of profession because of that. It just means that for me, that process of taking some time every day to rethink what I'm doing, it's mandatory. My body will make me. It's not like something that I'll have this app here and I'll meditate. No, my body will shut off. There will be that point that I'm at the grocery store that I'll feel like I'm full and that I can't read a label anymore because my brain is not functioning right. And I just need to stop. And these days, I stop. And I just think about my day. I try to relax. And that's it. I would like for people to know that.
And speaking professionally, right?
Yeah.
You were just at CBC this morning.
Yeah.
So you're here talking about MS now, but what were you doing here this morning?
So I'm communication professional and a journalist. And I was here as a PR person for a festival. And because they hired me for that. And I had to wake up because it was the morning show. I had to wake up this morning at 6 to get ready, to go pick up my client, prepare my client, and then come here. And that was a whole process of thinking about my medication. So I didn't take those 2 pills to help me to sleep because I know if I took them in the morning, I would be lethargic. So I split it. I took half. And that I did that because my doctor that is right here suggested I could do that. Is my management that I can do. So I took a half pill last night. So I didn't sleep as good last night, but it was necessary because I needed to be here to do my job. And then this morning, I took the medication that I take for pain, so I wouldn't have a pain crisis during the work, because no one wants that. And that medication I just take sometimes, but then I took this morning, because I didn't want pain this morning. So those things that people that don't live with autoimmune disease don't need to think about.
Yeah.
You grab your coffee and you go. Of course, everyone has challenges. I'm not diminishing it. But having MS or other autoimmune diseases, it will add something more.
Zita Kavanaugh-Taylor, what about yourself for awareness?
For awareness, I just like for everybody to, we're just normal people. Like she said, we're just want to keep going with our everyday. When I was diagnosed with MS, it was in 2010, I was discriminated against by my employer. And I don't look at it as they've been mean to me. I look at it as not being educated to the illness. So I like just everybody, if they could just take a moment to read up a bit on MS, or when you have somebody in the family or your friends or that or you know someone, a coworker that have MS, just take a few minutes out of your day and just ask them about it. It's amazing how people will look at the internet for lots of things, search up the weirdest things going, but nobody would take the time to just search up multiple sclerosis. And if you went to the MS Society of Canada website, you get all the true material there. It's excellent material in that. I myself lead a support group, and you don't judge a book by its cover just because we're here today and we don't have a cane or a walker or that. We can walk in and we don't look like there's anything wrong with us. But I get that a lot that, oh, you look great. Well, thank you. But my legs are in pain here, killing me. But you know, we learn, like she said, we learn to deal with it. We learn to compromise the way we live, different things. Like she took her pills and half them. Well, like we learn to do things totally different. And when it comes to like a gathering and you got friends, co-workers that's going to go to maybe a tea or a coffee, and just because you said one time, no, you can't, because your body's telling you got to rest, you should not leave that person out. Do not ask them again.
That is so true.
It is, isn't it?
Oh my God, you say
It
no
happens.
one time because you were feeling pretty bad, like you can barely walk.
Yeah, and
you
then
feel like,
it's like nobody asks you again after. Yeah. It's like we're not different. We just got an illness that we never asked for. And but we're learning to live with it. And everybody, like Dr. Cliff said, everybody is not the same. It's all the same symptoms, but we handle it's all done differently, and that. So this just take one piece of material and educate yourself, or even if you're just, you know, if you called in today and just asked us a question of MS or. You know, and like people say, oh, I'm sorry you got it. But like when I got diagnosed, I asked myself, why me? Why me? Yeah. I did. But my husband always said, your answer was that I support people. I have advocated for people. I have advocated for MS. I have done a lot. And through COVID, we had to change our stuff around, couldn't meet regularly in meetings and that. So I performed a little group called Smiling Warriors, NL, and that goes right from Newfoundland and Labrador. It goes all across the island. So we can reach out to people, and people can reach out to me, and my phone number's on my site, and I got an answering machine there. And I will get back to you. I do. I get back to you because I can say, when somebody say, you know, I got pain. Is it normal to have pain in your legs or your arms, or my hand is all numb? Then I can say, I've been down that road. I know what it's like. And that makes it a little bit easier for people. And like, it's hard for your family to understand when you get diagnosed first, because like, the fatigue, like people say, go in and take a rest.
Yeah.
This,
but you go take the rest just because you can't stand anymore.
Yeah.
Like literally, you can't stand physically, and then you don't rest.
Yeah.
Because like your legs are shaking all the time.
Yeah.
Your eyes are like kind of twitching all the time. So what's that
it's
rest?
Like your fatigue. The fatigue is not like I never got enough sleep last night. The fatigue is just hit you, and it hit you at any time today, right? Yeah. And it's just your body. You go lie down and rest, and you get up, and it's like you never rest. And you just got to learn. You got to learn to listen to your body, and that's not an easy thing to do. Is it, Dr. Cliff?
Definitely not.
No.
And you both are so very well spoken and have highlighted a couple of, you know, very troublesome symptoms in multiple sclerosis. And just to kind of backtrack a little bit, you know, to ask the question of what MS is, like, yes, it is very common, particularly in North America and Europe. But as Bruna said, multiple sclerosis is an autoimmune disease where our immune system is dysregulated. It's otherwise perfectly capable of screening your body for cancers and screening your body for infections and kind of fixing those issues. But for some reason, it gets wired incorrectly, whether that's a genetic problem or whether or not that's an environmental trigger. We don't really know at this stage. But the target of that dysregulated immune system is the myelin sheath that wraps around all the nerves in our central nervous system. And so symptoms of multiple sclerosis really relate to where inflammation is at any given time. So if it's in your optic nerve, you may get visual blurring at some point. If it's in your spinal cord, you may get numbness, tingling, pins and needles, those type of things. When you have those things happen acutely, we call them a relapse. But there's much more to multiple sclerosis than just relapses. And there's what you guys have just highlighted, which are kind of day-to-day fluctuations about symptoms that are almost invisible to most people. And that's why I always tell people when I'm diagnosing them, you've probably worked next to, had supper with, partied with people with multiple sclerosis and never noticed it before. And it's those invisible symptoms that can be very, very troublesome and oftentimes can be disabling to some point, to some extent.
I know from a couple of friends of mine who live with MS, there's conversations around getting the diagnosis. And actually, both of you earlier, before the show started, there was a similar thing. It's around getting the diagnosis and things making sense once you get to that point.
Yes.
But for like a friend of mine in the Maritimes, it took a long time to get there. And then finally it made sense. So I was just wondering if you could just share your thoughts around that.
It went a long time. I hear that a lot as a support group leader. When getting the diagnosis is a long time because MS mimics other illness. So all of that got to be ruled out before they can give you your final diagnosis. In my family, I had nobody that had MS. Now, we don't know if MS is inherited or not inherited. There's no real signs out on that yet. But as a support group leader, I have met members that had 3 and 4 in their family. And then I have met members that had a long-distance cousin in their family. Years ago, when I was growing up, most of my family went to the United States. So not with the technology that we got today, I started doing family history. And I got right into that, and that's actually interesting stuff. And so I got right into the family history, and I came across some of my cousins, my distant cousins that that was on my dad's side. And I just asked, did anyone in the family have? And I found out. And apparently it's all on my dad's side. Now, years ago, my dad was in World War II, and he always complained of his legs. And my mom, bless her soul, she passed away. She said, "Your sounds just like your dad. You couldn't walk the length of yourself."
Oh, wow.
So, like, I still don't, like, years ago, they didn't know what MS was, and there was not a name on it. So I still, I think that maybe my dad did have it. Right? And, and years ago, they never ever told all the medical histories. Like, you wouldn't go home and tell the wife what.
No, of course,
like that was, right?
Speaking of stigma, like back then especially, right, for anything.
Yeah. So that's what, and like, it's true what Dr. Cliff said. You could be sat next to somebody that do have MS. You could have been at a social with someone that had MS. You could be, your coworker could be next to you, got MS. But because of the stigma that goes with it and the discrimination that I faced a lot of people hide behind it. And it's a sad thing because you shouldn't have to hide behind it. You shouldn't. Because when I won my case and my employer came, seeing that everything was, you would not believe how many coworkers came to me and said, I have multiple sclerosis. But they were afraid because you're afraid for your job. Right? And all that. So it's a sad thing. But every day we're getting closer and closer to getting better at it.
And you're talking 2010, right? We're not saying 1990 or 1980 or something.
Yeah,
2010 doesn't feel like it's that long ago. So.
Yeah, well, when you get a diagnosis when I got my diagnosis of multiple sclerosis, I was laid in a hospital bed. I could not walk. I thought my husband was going to bring me home in a walker and in a wheelchair. And I had my little boy who's now 15. He was not quite 2 years old, and my daughter that's convocating tomorrow.
Congratulations.
Thank you. She was only turned 13. So here's my whole life. And, then I get faced that, we're going to work with you, but you know, we just can't find nothing for you right now. And it's like I was saying, no, this is not right and everything. So everything was going, and then I lost my mom in 2010 also. So everything was, and I knew when I went into my employer and I was dealing with all that, my husband knew when I go into all our meetings and that, I will come home and I will be maybe 3 days on the couch because it's just stress brought the MS out worse on me. And all I wanted to do was just put the medication in me, go, forget about it. I thought that's the way it was going to work. But in 2010, you never think that people are going to discriminate. But you know what? It doesn't matter what year. Yeah. People are always going to have that look, you know, but we educate. We're getting better at educating it and speaking up more and
talking about it
and talking about
creating
it.
that awareness.
Yeah.
Right? Bruna, what about with yourself? That moment for what the medical realization you had.
Yeah. Can I just add something
that
I was just thinking? I was thinking while she was talking, was with this misdiagnosed and the discrimination and not understanding and not wanting to look for what you have, we have also a big social aspect on MS of communities. Well, I'm from Brazil, right? And I imagine how many people in Brazil are in like poor communities in Latin America countries or in other countries, and they feel like, oh, today my arm is numb, but I really need to go to my minimum wage job to make life. So they just keep going. And then the access to good doctors and tests, all the tests are very expensive. And so I always think about the social aspect of MS too, included in these statistics about like where is more predominant. Aren't we like actually not diagnosing in other countries just because of the economics of these other countries, and people are just living with it? Yeah, living with the uncomfortable symptoms.
And like what she's saying about the social aspect, we got that here in Newfoundland. Yeah, because our little outports, like Labrador and that, like we're in St. John's, so we got the health science there. We got our, you know, we're not in reach of a neurologist or MS nurse and everything, but all these little ports that have to travel in, that you don't want to say nothing into community because the community might be only say 200, 300. So, you tell somebody else telling someone else, before you're ready to tell the whole world, you could say, then it's out there, right? So that's hard too when it comes to support groups and everything in these small little communities and that too, right? That's the whole social aspect of it too.
Yeah, and it's easy to start understanding barriers to care, whether it's geographic or whether it's because of certain community and stigma and that type of thing. But all of a sudden, I mean, it's easy to see them, start to stack up, right?
Yes.
And like you, Dr. Cliff, you must have these conversations all the time, right? Like, just like around looking or just thinking about it, like certain barriers and trying to eliminate barriers to getting folks in to get the care that they need.
100%. It's, although we're very fortunate to live in a, publicly funded healthcare system, these gaps still exist, and they're incredibly frustrating for physicians and healthcare providers because access is not the same across the province of Newfoundland and Labrador. And so we try to overcome that with, traveling clinics and locums. But the reality is, unfortunately, as of right now, these gaps will still occur until we find, better ways to communicate, with the general population, essentially.
And then this is also, we're at a time when there's a health accord. We're trying to reimagine the health system, trying to figure out ways to rebuild it, break down silos, make it so that the gaps are filled, and this is the massive push that's ongoing as we're having this type of a conversation.
Absolutely, and I like that. I like that term of kind of rebuilding silos, because in a lot of respects, that's what we're doing with multiple sclerosis in general. Is we're kind of changing the way that people think about this disease, and historically we've tried to silo people into one of 4 subcategories of multiple sclerosis, whether that's relapsing remitting, which is the most common one one that we'll see in the clinic, or primary progressive, secondary progressive, or relapsing progressive disease. But the reality is, and the current understanding is, that that's not the case. And no one reads these textbooks perfectly to know that their disease course falls into one of these silos. We know that people with progressive forms of multiple sclerosis can have relapses, and we know that people with relapsing predominant disease can have progression. And so that's part of the kind of expanded knowledge of MS and where we stand in 2024, and what differs from, say, 2010 or 2022, whenever people were diagnosed. You mentioned genetics, and genetics is a huge thing, and you're absolutely right to say that there probably is not one specific gene. In fact, over 200 genes have been implicated in multiple sclerosis. We actually have a study that just started looking at specific genetics in Newfoundland and Labrador related to multiple sclerosis. So anyone who's got a family member at any point, whether it's first degree, second degree, third degree, 10th degree, we're encouraging them to be part of this study. So that will hopefully give us some insight into MS in Newfoundland and Labrador.
So if anyone's listening to that, how do they get in touch to
touch base with the clinic? Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So,
and we'll
hit the Google button, touch base with the clinic, and away you go.
Yeah.
You're listening to The Signal. I'm Adam Walsh. Today we're talking about multiple sclerosis. It's Awareness Month. Today is World MS Day. You were just listening to Dr. Fraser Clift there, who's a neurologist with a specialty in multiple sclerosis, here in the studio as well. We have Zita Kavanaugh-Taylor and Bruna Cardoso. We're going to go to the phones for a second, because we've got Laura Delahunty on the line. How you doing, Laura?
I'm doing well. How are you today?
Good. Before I get for the reason why I called you, you're in CBS. How's the weather out there today? Because it's nice in St. John, so you know.
I'm sitting on the deck right now.
Okay. I like to do the little weather checks around that when it's CBS, because it's always like 4 degrees warmer and nicer.
It definitely is.
All right. I'm just you're a nurse. You're living with MS, and I'm wondering about the intersection of what you've learned from living with MS, and also like that nursing side of things when it comes to healthcare and treatment, and I guess the importance of advocating for yourself.
Yeah, I mean, I'll be honest. I work in critical care at the Health Science Center, so I was not very well informed about multiple sclerosis before being diagnosed. Thankfully, it's not a reason we tend to have admissions in our intensive care unit. I mean, I have certainly had patients that have been living with MS, and they may have been admitted for other reasons. But I really learned so much more about it after being diagnosed myself. I certainly, after going through it myself, I saw the importance of advocating for yourself and trying to. I mean, that's where reaching out to like a support group. I know that Zita has been in contact with me several times when I've had different symptoms or different flare-ups, and she's been a big support. She's been very helpful. And I know I reached out to Bruna after reading her seeing her interview that she had done with CBC a little while ago. And just upon, contacting her and sitting and having a conversation, it's so helpful to talk to somebody else. I mean, no two people have the same progression of illness. No two people have the same symptoms. But there's always similarities in what everyone's experiencing, and it's so helpful to have that support from another person who kind of understands what you're going through.
And Bruna, I can bring you into this as well. What's that moment like when Laura reaches out for you, and then you meet up? Where'd you meet, by the way?
We met at the Duke of Duckworth.
Okay, good place. Good place to meet up.
Yeah. Best pub in town. and we had a beer, because we folks with MS, we can drink small amounts, right, Doctor? Don't be mad at me.
I just gotten off my 12-hour shift, so I went and met up with Bruna.
Yeah, and it was like meeting best friend in 1 second, right, Laura? It was like,
absolutely.
My arm tingles today. What about you?
Yeah, we related a lot on our symptoms and just what we were experiencing, what we were going through. So it felt like that we had been in contact for many years, even though we've only met up a couple of times since then. So
it really underscores the importance of, I think, connection of, in this, I'll use the term like peer-to-peer support, really, right? Like just to have folks to know, I'm not alone in this, and to hear that someone's facing similar things, albeit maybe a little bit different, but some with the similarities, it just, you can really kind of hear why these things are so important, for why for reaching out to folks, and how crucial it can be.
Absolutely. And especially there's always, as somebody who deals with MS, then it's easy to take every feeling, every symptom, every possible thing you're experiencing and wonder, is it related to MS, or is it because of my age? Is it because I'm a woman? Is it because of the weather today? I don't know. And it's really important, it's really nice to be able to bounce those questions off somebody else who is also going through a similar experience, and they can kind of say, yes, I've experienced the same thing, or maybe it's just that you're in your 40s now.
Yeah, right. There's also that. Yeah. And you fundraise too, right? Can you tell us about it?
Absolutely. So my husband and I, we play music. We play in a band together. We've done a couple of fundraisers now. We started out, it was kind of a trial run we did in our backyard here in CBS, and that was very successful a couple of summers ago. So we did another one last autumn in CBS at one of the bars here, and that was very successful. So I'm hoping now, I'm meeting with somebody at the Breezeway on Friday. My husband and I are going to meet with them on Friday, and we're hoping to do another fundraiser in the fall when all the students are coming back for this fall semester at Memorial, and hopefully we'll be able to put a lot of word out there and just raise more awareness and have more empowerment for that.
All right. I appreciate, Laura, thank you so much for taking time out of your day, because I know you got, it was a different scheduled day for you, so I appreciate you having a few minutes to come on the show. And,
well, I appreciate you reaching out.
Oh, and good luck with the fundraising and everything else.
Thank you.
Laura Delahunty there on the line from, I think they call it, was it God's Country they say for CBS? Anyways, that's what, from when I was growing up, that's what they used to say. Not that I feel that way about it. We got a text from the text line here. Let me see. I'm hoping in today's, and folks, look, as you're listening to the show, right, we're talking about multiple sclerosis. We're talking about awareness. If you've got thoughts for us, the text line is open, 709-327-8206. Emails thesignal@cbc.ca. Text in. I'm hoping in today's talk the benefits of a diet change can be very helpful. Ashley Madden is a pharmacist from St. John's who was diagnosed with MS after graduating MUN and eliminating, it's just about like the importance of plant-based and whole food diets, around like just thinking about diet when it comes to MS. What are your thoughts on that, Dr. Cliff?
This is a very kind of topical area right now. We know that our gut microbiome, so all the microorganisms that line our intestine, have a huge role to play in immune function and immune modulation. What we need to focus on, and there's a lot of effort being put into this right now globally, is how we can manipulate that gut microbiome and create almost an anti-inflammatory cytokine milieu, if you will. The troublesome thing is that diet is a very hard thing to study scientifically. Yeah. And so as it stands right now, there is no one diet that is scientifically and evidence proven to be helpful in the context of multiple sclerosis. And you may Google MS and diet and actually come across maybe 10 different diets, all of which are conflicting. And they all kind of are touted as cures for multiple sclerosis. There's Terry Wall's protocol, there's Swank protocol, there's paleo, there is celiac diets. All of these are kind of sold as cures or at least beneficial for MS. But the reality is right now there's no evidence to suggest that. I suspect of all of these, there is some grumbling support for a modified ketogenic diet, and that's not specific to multiple sclerosis, but rather associated with different immune-mediated diseases. But we're not at a position of recommending specific diets just yet. I always tell people that give it 5 years, and I suspect that we will be prescribing diet much like we prescribe medications for multiple sclerosis.
That's really interesting, though. Just like I find the look ahead when we talk about this type of thing. Like, here's where we were, here's where we are, and here's where we're hoping kind of to be when it comes to research and development around stuff.
Yeah. Now, I always also tell people, and I see them in clinic, that when you eat lousy, you're going to feel lousy. And that's not unique to multiple sclerosis. I think that's just life. If you sit down and gorge on a bag of Doritos, then you're probably not going to feel as well as if you had a salad. Yeah. So I always recommend just a balanced, healthy diet, and probably reasonable to eat fish. In Newfoundland and Labrador, that shouldn't be an issue. And probably avoid salt as best you can as well.
I want to go back. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Going back to the food and that and the diet, I follow this gentleman. He's got MS 25, 26 years. He's got a site called MS Hope. And Matthew Embry, his name is. And he has a best bet diet book. And I do have a copy of it. And he gives good suggestions on healthy eating and that. Yeah. Me, myself, I don't go by it like, it's the whole Bible. Like, because once you, you don't want to give up your bag of chips. Or something on a Friday night.
A Friday night, bowl of Doritos. Is there's joy in that.
Yes. So
even though it might be bad for you, sorry, Dr.
No, there's healing in that. I agrie. There's healing in the odd. Yeah.
You don't want to give that up. So it's hard, right? So I read up on his stuff, and he has so good, inspirational stories there too. Yeah. And I found dairy with me. I found I every time I love ice cream, and especially making myself a banana split.
Oh yeah.
And,
I'm with you.
And I did that, and each time I did it, I always found my symptoms seemed to act up, and I seemed to get real terrible, and it's like, what happened to me? And so I started reading some of his stuff, and I dairy, I'll cut dairy out. And sure enough, I cut dairy out, and it was perfect. Wow. It was. My MS symptoms were way better, but I had a very weak day. One day I went to the supermarket, and ice cream just looked at me, just stared right at me. And I went home, I took it, and I got the bananas, and I made that ice cream, and it was good while I was eating it, but then I paid for it for 3 days after with my MS symptoms. So I know that I'll have a coffee. I'll have one cream in it. That's it. But dairy, like ice cream, that I don't. I give it up. And that's what I did. I just read these books, goes into his site every now and then and looks at it just for inspirational and that, and see what's on the go and then. Just goes, and then I just picks, because I got a 15-year-old home too, right? So it's not everything that I'm going to eat that he wants to eat. So we try to eat the same thing at supper time. So I just pick different things and try it and that. But I found the dairy with me and that. So it's just more of judging, like Dr. Cliff said, there's nothing concrete that you got to go buy this food and eat it, and your MS would be perfect. It's just looking at your body and learning. Again, it goes back to learning how to listen to your body.
Yeah, I was going to say, because earlier in the show you mentioned it's so important to listen to your body with MS and how hard it is. And again,
it is hard.
Yeah, and this is just another example of it, right?
Yeah.
And you've been fundraising too, right? Because I was wondering about the. There's a mental health conversation to be had too. Can you tell us about it?
Oh my gosh, it's about 8 years ago. I started this fundraiser all on my own with my dog, because our dogs are little furry animals, keeps us going, keeps us get out there and push. And even if we feel like that we can't really move far, we still got to take them for a little short walk. So that gets us walking. And so I got this fundraiser on the go called Pause for MS. And so I kept it going. I went around and tried to get some donations. And critters and things in Mount Pearl, I went in there to get a little donation for him, and he liked the idea. And so he approached me, and we joined together. And we always raise the money, and we give it locally to Dr. Craig Moore's lab and Dr. Michelle Plowham's lab at the Miller Centre, because I believe in research, and I believe also in exercise and that, and I believe in helping the person living with MS today for their quality of life. And so with COVID and everything, we all know mental health, but I got there this year and we had our dog walk, and I was thinking mental health is a big thing, and sometimes people, well, because we're not in a wheelchair or a cane or that or a walker, people don't see anything wrong with us, but our mental health is affected with multiple sclerosis because all our changes and everything. And so I reached out to the Mental Health Society, and we joined up as partners this year for Pause for MS, and we put the funds to locally to mental health this year. We did. And like when you go into your neurologist, if your hand is like can't move and you can't get the tingling out of it, it's numb, you can't feel it, you go into your neurologist, you got a good idea that might be 99% chance it's your multiple sclerosis. But, you know, you go into your neurologist, he confirms it or she confirms it. There's not really a lot you can do, right? There's not really a lot. It might be if you might be able to get a painkiller if it's pain and so bad, but there's not really a lot you can do. So that you're just losing this part of your body. So there's your independence. Your independence is being turned around. I won't say. I always looked at it first when I got diagnosed that I was losing my independence. But I'm not losing my independence. We're not, are we? We're making changes in our independence. We're still doing independent thing, even if we're in a wheelchair, even if, because MS has bladder issues comes with MS for some people. So even if a person's wearing Depends, they're making changes with their independence. They're not losing their independence. That's the way I like to look at it.
Yeah, of course.
I do. But that's where the mental health comes in.
And what I appreciate, like the intersection here with this as well, because I mean, May also Mental Health Awareness Month in Canada, and underscoring mental health through any number of conversations, work life, like, you know, for moms, for dads, for folks living with MS, for radio reporters, whatever, right? Like mental health is always an important conversation to be had, and how it can kind of impact and intersect with people and their lives. Bruna, thoughts?
When you were talking about your dog walk for MS, I love the idea. I can't wait to participate. And I go even if I don't have a dog. But that reminded me that I cannot go because I don't have a dog, you know?
No,
and then I was like, yeah, I want a dog. I want a dog. I want a dog. Yeah.
But it's one thing we always say, like, it's called Pause for MS because it started off with me and my dog. But you don't have to have a dog.
Oh, but I would love to.
Yeah, I know.
I would love
They're really good. I got to have a need.
Yeah.
But you don't have to have a dog to walk with us. If that's the day you feel good to walk with us, you know what? We had one person came to our first walk, and they said, this is the best medicine I could have.
Yeah, we can walk the dogs in the shelter.
That's
dogs.
true.
Yeah,
that's true.
Walk,
You always could volunteer. We have rest stops. Yeah,
and we could partner with them.
Yes.
But in the dog conversation I was thinking about, I heard peeps with MS that requested service animals to help like preventing fallings and also the emotional support, and got the access denied by their landlords.
Oh.
Yeah. Because they couldn't bring the service animal to the apartment, the house, whatever that they rent. And that goes to discrimination, right?
Yes.
Because a person might see that you can walk and like, do you really need that, you know?
Yeah, and it's it speaks to the invisibility of it, and folks not understanding just the disease and how it can function. Dr. Clifton, any thoughts on like the conversation so far? We got a note that came in as well, so if you have thoughts, great. And then I'm curious about this. It's a question around. It says, "Hi, I listen to your show right now on MS. I want to add for discussion." So this is a question for you. This person is going through psychotherapy for CPSTD over the past 2 years, and one thing that's come up in the depth of many discussions, it's MS and studies around evidence in connection to childhood trauma. Now, this person says they're fortunate enough not to be further like they're not living with MS, but they're going through this treatment. Just wondering if you've got any thoughts on this and that potential connections for studies.
Yeah, I mean, as I alluded to earlier, we don't really know the specific cause of multiple sclerosis. As I said, there's been over 200 genes studied, but this is not an absolute genetic phenomena. In fact, even identical twins, if one twin has multiple sclerosis, the chance of the other identical twin having is only about 30%. So clearly there is something else in the environment that triggers this in predisposed individuals. And over the last decade, we've looked into some of these epidemiological factors, and we have really identified a few things. And indeed, childhood head injuries have been associated with multiple sclerosis. But it's not an absolute phenomena whereby, every member of a soccer team growing up develops MS. It has to be kind of a perfect storm, so to speak. Other things that we've found as potential triggers in the environment would be low vitamin D status, and that again is associated with that geography that I alluded to earlier, whereby the further away from the equator, the less vitamin D exposure we have. Other things like childhood obesity, but a big thing right now would be viral triggers, and particularly in association with something called the Epstein-Barr virus, which is what causes infectious mononucleosis. And that's probably one of the leading hypotheses from an environmental trigger perspective right now.
On the mental health side, for when you're yourself and seeing patients every day, what's the conversation like when it comes to mental health and folks living with MS?
There's so much on the table there, in fact, because there is an inherited predisposition towards mood and affective symptoms in patients with multiple sclerosis, meaning that there is a higher likelihood of major depressive disorder or generalized anxiety disorder compared to the general population. But also there is situational things like you guys have already highlighted. It's coping with this life-changing diagnosis because this is a chronic illness. And there is still stigma associated with it, and there's still issues related to work and social life that can definitely impact mental health. And so you can get symptoms of an adjustment disorder that can be quite impactful in terms of quality of life.
Why'd you get into this, by the way? I'm just curious because we're going through the whole show, and I was like, wait, I kind of want to know why neurology and why MS and your thoughts there.
It's a great question.
How many shows do you got, Adam? We could do a whole podcast.
Yeah, that's right. We'll just take up the next hour. No, I think that neurology in particular is fascinating because it's kind of the final frontier. We've explored as much as we can with the heart and the lungs, but there's still so much unknown when it comes to the brain. If your kidneys fail, you go on dialysis, but if your brain fails, there's nothing left. And so that kind of great unknown has always been attractive to me because there's so much that you can consider and do with that. MS in particular, I think there's a number of things that drew me to it. First of all, it's predominantly a disease of young people, and it's a chronic illness. So you get a chance to diagnose people in the early stage and follow them longitudinally, which is so rewarding in many aspects. But more importantly, it's a very, very active area from a research perspective. And now we can intervene at the earliest possible time point in someone's life and have a significant impact on 30 years from now. Imagine that. You can diagnose someone after a first clinical event of multiple sclerosis, or even nowadays prior to having a clinical event if they've got radiological changes. And you put someone on treatment, and their life is different. We're reducing the rates of disability by some of our current treatments, and that's so rewarding to look back on a career to say you could potentially have made a difference in someone's life.
And I'll kind of circle back again to the kind of the start of the show when I mentioned remembering the 90s. I remember when the conversation was bee sting treatment and this type of thing. And now to hear this and where things are now, it's kind of like it's wild, like how far things have moved along.
Yeah, I mean, when I started my neurology residency in 2011, we had 5 approved treatments for multiple sclerosis. By the time I finished my fellowship in 2018, we had, I think, 12, and now we're sitting at 16 with a whole group of 5 new medications on the horizon that will probably be game changers in the field of multiple sclerosis, as they're thought to potentially target both relapses and progression in MS. And they're probably going to be available within the next couple of years.
So for both of you, when you hear this kind of a thing, there's the balance in your daily life. There's and all the health hurdles that come up with it, but then also on the hope side and seeing how things have developed over the years. What are your thoughts then when you hear like, oh, hey, there's more coming potentially?
It's exciting thoughts. It's hopeful thoughts that we're getting further and further. Because, like, if we have a relapse and we have a bad relapse, like me and her were talking about before the show started, we have to be put on steroids. And we're put on steroids, and steroids got very bad side effects to it. And it's with steroids, you're just hoping that, you know, the legs are going to work again or the sight is going to come back again.
And we were talking about when we are in the steroids, we need to hope because that's the only thing we can do. But those large doses of steroids put us in a deep depression.
Yes,
and then how do you hope?
Yeah.
If the medication is killing your ability to hope, that is depression.
Yeah.
And I can't wait, doctor, for them to find a medication for the relapses that is not steroids.
These things have all been kind of looked at historically, and we've tried different avenues. But as it stands right now, steroids unfortunately still are the mainstay of relapse treatment. Stay tuned. There's so much happening in that realm.
And Bruno, when we did, because I interviewed you a few months ago now, and we've put that interview is like you can find it for cbc.ca/NL. We have it up on YouTube as well. But from our interview, you talked about like what you've learned about life since diagnosis, and I mean it's only a few months later, but that life learning bit that you're doing, how's that progressing for everything you're doing?
It's always in progress, right? When we talked at that time, I was still developing endurance in the aspect of not feeling anxious about life. Because at that point, a month ago, I would still be very anxious. For example, I want to do that vacation next month because I don't know if I will be walking next year. I want to learn this new instrument today because I don't know if I will have hands mobility in 2 years from now. So I used to have that mindset. And I think because of the community, because of the treatment that we have been doing for me, I am on medication to prevent new relapses. And also with the maturity that I have been gaining this past month, I'm a little better on that.
Okay.
Yeah. I don't feel that anxious anymore.
Good.
Not always.
Not always. Work in progress.
Work in progress.
Well, I just got a text from Laura Delhunty, who's on at the halfway point of this show. Laura also mentioned for the fundraiser that she does, it goes to MS research being conducted at MUN in collaboration with Eastern Health. Laura, thanks for that that little update there via text, which I always appreciate, folks. We've got 1 minute left. Any final thoughts? A couple seconds each from today.
I think this was an excellent MS World Day, still MS World Day, but I think you did a great job. Thank you very much for giving us this hope and this awareness.
Oh my gosh, Zita, no, look, thank you for coming in for the discussion. Anytime folks come in to share about their lives, it's it is just so important, because if not, it'd be just me talking about dumb stuff. So I really appreciate it. Doc, what about yourself?
No, I just mirror those sentiments, that I think it's great that you guys did this today. And for those out there that are living with multiple sclerosis, I would ask for patience and optimism. I do have a great deal of optimism for the future of this disease, and Sometimes it's a matter of riding through the storm to get to the other side.
And that's it for today's show. Dr. Fraser Clift, thank you. Zita Kavanaugh-Taylor, thank you. And Bruna Cardoso, thank you very much.
Thank you.
The show will be up on YouTube later today, and we're also available wherever you get your podcasts and on the CBC Listen app. Tomorrow, we're hitting the road tomorrow, and we're going to visit our friends at the Colony of Avalon. And I'm really hoping to taste some quacking puddings and cackling farts. You heard me. The Colony crowd are working on a cookbook, so we're going to take a trip back to the kitchens of the 17th century. And yes, those are two recipe names. So you're going to find out about them tomorrow. Until then, thanks for listening.